Hey guys, Poro here with another Worlds 2025 team breakdown, this time for VKS from the LTA. All of you VKS fans, just know I have a bone to pick with you because you swept my boy IU in playoffs. That aside, I think this team was actually one of the more interesting ones for me to go back and watch the games for, and I'm excited to do a breakdown for the Brazilian team who finally won a best of 5 against an international opponent. I remember at the very start of 2025, I did my LTA South team rankings video, and I put VKS in 6th place. At the time, they were promoting Morteus to the main lineup from Academy, they had a high-risk, high-potential mid-lane option with Kisei, and my read was that the team would need time to actually be good. The Brazilian community in the comments were pretty adamant that the combination of Trimby and Coach CL would be enough to make them a top team, and I was pretty skeptical back then, but I would say when the dust settled, we were both right in a way. As I predicted, it did take some time for the roster to actually get going. Kisei ended up not being good enough at all, and he eventually needed to be replaced, and Morteus definitely was a bit of a project too. Heading into summer, I did my power rankings again, and this time I had VKS all the way up to 3rd, because I liked the idea of Miro on the team, and I thought Brawl and Dasamis ended up looking better than I thought they would. They managed to completely surpass my expectations though, and they steamrolled their way through LTA South playoffs as the clear best team and headed to the cross-conference qualifiers. Once there, they would get destroyed by FlyQuest, and there were a lot of people from the north echoing sentiments of the south not belonging there, and that the south was just stealing spots. What ended up unfolding though was pretty cool, as the South 2 seed Red Canids beat the North 3 seed Shopify Rebellion, and VKS would go on to defeat the North 2 seed 100 Thieves on the way to Grand Finals to rematch FlyQuest, where they would end up looking a lot better than the first attempt. Throughout the year, I really wasn't convinced this team would be anything special, but now that cross-conference and domestic play is over, I've definitely become a lot higher on these guys than I was before. I want to set the expectations up front. I don't think this team will do that well at Worlds. I think they can maybe pick up a win during Swiss stage, but I would be pretty surprised if they made it to the final round of qualification spots. The reason why I'm saying this now is because the video will end up almost being like the inverse to the Gen G breakdown. In that video, I led off by saying Gen G is probably the best team in the world, and I spent the entire video trying to find cracks and holes in their game to see what ways they could lose if they end up not winning Worlds. For VKS, I want to do the opposite, where while I think this team will probably struggle, I think there are a lot of positive traits to mention for this team that other analysts who haven't watched the South might miss. As such, I want this video to be a more optimistic tone than usual because I think the trajectory of both this team and the teams in the CBLOL as a whole have a bright future ahead of them if they keep down this path. I would like to see the CBLOL do well enough next year that they can challenge Riot's stupid notion that the region only deserves one world slot in 2026, so let's get right into introducing the players. Brawl is not the type of top laner you would expect to be on a team like this. He shows promise and he's young, but quite frankly, he seems more like a player who you would put on a development roster instead of a championship one. His career trajectory has him bouncing back and forth between Academy and Tier 1, and he even took an entire year off in 2024 prior to joining VKS. I tend to think Brawl is probably the player on this team who will struggle the most at an international level. The other players on this team each have had good experience in stronger regions, or at prior international tournaments, or they're at or near the top of their role domestically. I don't think Brawl is any of these things. While he can certainly hold his own in the South, I think there's an argument for about 4 other top laners in the region who you would want on your team before him. He's had a few good games though. One of Brawl's strengths is that he's a pretty good team fighter. He had some strong team fights in the LTA South playoffs, and it seems like he's pretty good at building space for his team and being patient. I don't think I was able to see this strength come out against Fly or 100 Thieves though, which is part of why I'm worried for him at Worlds, but I would still say Brawl has some qualities that make him an interesting prospect moving forward. It's not easy to take a year off and then win a title at such a young age. Clearly there's something there if he's developed properly. Dasamis is where we start getting into the players who make this team really interesting. I've enjoyed watching Dasamis play, and I think he's got a solid case for being the best performing jungler in LTA South this year, which is no small feat because I think the South actually has some really promising junglers like Taru, Jose Diodo, Doom, and Griffin. Apart from Jose, who's pretty polished at this point and is probably about as good as he'll get, the others are all pretty young and have their fair share of strengths and weaknesses. For Dasamis, I really like how active around the map he is. He's always searching for plays that can be made, and he works well with Trimby to make those plays happen. I saw on the Leaguepedia page that apparently the community considers Dasamis to be the Brazilian Canyon, but I actually don't see that at all. I think Dasamis is a much more active jungler than Canyon when it comes to trying to find leads for his team or pressuring the opponent, and I'd compare him more to a jungler like Owner if anything. Dasamis is also a pretty good team fighter from what I've seen. I think most of the members of VKS have this as one of their strengths, but Dasamis seems like the best team fighter of the bunch. His mechanics are pretty good, and he's fearless in fights which leads to him taking over completely at times. It's not surprising to me that Dasamis was able to go toe-to-toe with River, who's considered one of the better LCS junglers, and I think he's one of the players to keep an eye out for if VKS want to win some games in Swiss. If you asked the LTA South community who the MVP of the year was, they would probably tell you it was Miru. He won 2 of the 3 splits this year on 2 separate teams, and he's also one of the most experienced players on the roster with decent trips to both MSI and Worlds under his belt. In my opinion, Miru is the poster child for what an LCK import who isn't quite good enough to stay in the league looks like. His mechanics are pretty solid, his laning is fine, and he can play most styles of champions. In the LTA South, he had some pop-off performances on picks like Aurora, Akali, and Sylas, 3 pretty flashy champions who can have huge game impact if the player is good enough to pilot them. I would say I've considered Miru to be a respectable player for the past couple of years, and it makes sense that he's done well domestically. However, I actually don't think Miru is quite as good as the LTA South community thinks he is. Maybe I'm just a bit disillusioned from watching too much LPL and LCK, but I can't seem to find anything about Miru I would consider to be special, or even above average for a stage like Worlds. I watched some of the games where he had crazy scorelines, and it didn't exactly feel like he was doing anything insane that another mid lane import wouldn't be able to do. Don't get me wrong, I think Miru deserved his first team All-Pro selection. However, when it comes to how high a player's ceiling can get, I'm definitely more interested in players like Kaze and Toots. I know people thought Toots didn't have the greatest split 3 ever, but the stuff he was doing at MSI made me think there was something worth exploring there, and the same thing with how Kaze played against Shopify. Miru doesn't interest me as much because I don't think he's going to get much better, and I think he'll end up being surpassed by the local talent in years to come. At Worlds, expect Miru to be fine. If he goes up against other bottom half mid laners, he'll be able to play a decent game. I don't think he's going to be the type of player who can elevate this team to the next level though, and I'm looking more at the other Brazilians of the team for that. Speaking of, Morteus is someone whose year has been interesting. Full disclosure, I didn't watch much of Split 1 or 2 for the LTA South, or even much of Split 3 regular season for that matter. Apart from the one-off regular season series I was interested in, the only other games I watched from the South were Split 2 playoffs and Split 3 playoffs. So what I'm about to say, I've only heard from the community and haven't really noticed firsthand. According to the fans of the region, Morteus has been a pretty coin-flippy player. Not in the sense that he'll run it down, I don't mean the Jackie Love type of coin flip. What I mean is that his performance is inconsistent as he sometimes plays way too passively, while other times he'll actually show up and participate in the game. The running sentiment seems to be that Morteus' year has been defined by whether or not he has the confidence to commit to fights with his team. From what I saw in Split 3 playoffs and the cross-conference matches, I would say it seems like the guys figured it out, and I was very impressed with what I saw. Especially in the series against 100 Thieves, it felt like Morteus was one of the main driving forces that stepped up and elevated the team. This is the type of player I'm looking for when a team from Brazil goes to an international. In terms of players I'm excited to watch from this team, it's gotta be Morteus and Tisamis at the top. There were a number of great team fights both from domestic playoffs and against the North teams that I was able to pull out and admire, and I feel like this guy has a pretty high ceiling. I'm glad they grabbed him from the academy system, and I think he's going to be a real force in 2026. Finally, you've got their European support import, Trimby. Trimby coming to the CP LoL was meant to be like the equivalent of Core JJ going to the LCS, in that people believe Trimby will help elevate the region due to his experience on larger stages. The confidence in Trimby is well-founded, I would say, as he spent time in the LEC being considered as the best Western support, and he's had a deep Worlds run before. As for how he turned out, I would say it's been a little bit of positives and a little bit of negatives. He's definitely got some qualities in which he's the best in the region. One example is his champion pool, and this is a strength he's always had. Trimby is one of those players who's always thinking about what the best pick in the moment might be, and it leads to him finding some fun angles to pick champions in spots other players wouldn't think about, like when he finds a good Milio angle or Lulu angle. He's also got a few champions he's still a lead on. I was very impressed with how his Nico looked, for example. In terms of negatives, I think it's clear his mechanics have taken a bit of a dip since his time in EU. He's still got the ability to make game-winning engages, but he also dies on stupid timers a lot more than I would have expected for a player like him. Even when he has these disaster games though, he's pretty good at keeping calm and finding the right windows to go in. He had a 1-in-7 Nautilus game against 100 Thieves, which exemplifies my point perfectly, as he had a slew of bad engages that got him blown up, but he also made multiple really good plays that led to his team's eventual win. When you listen to the player breakdowns, it doesn't seem like this team is all that exciting. Their top laner is decent, their support has fallen off a bit from his prime, they have your average everyday run-of-the-mill Korean import mid laner. Doesn't seem like a super promising set of players. However, I think this is one of the teams that's a lot more than just their individual players. The first thing I want to point out right away is that the rate in which this team grows and improves rivals the fastest I've seen. Usually it takes a team an entire event or a full split to nail down a new concept, but VKS has been moving at a blistering rate. They went from literal last place in winter to winning games against the LTA North 1 seed in summer, and it wasn't a fluke. Even just over the course of Split 3 playoffs, you can tell the team hit another level they hadn't hit all year. For an example of this, just watch how the team looked in their 3 cross-conference matches. In their first series against Fly, they looked completely outclassed and terrible. Game 1 looked even for about 20 minutes, but one bad engage and it was over from there. Games 2 and 3 weren't even close for a minute. After the series, a lot of people were saying VKS looked worse than Red, and the assumption was that VKS would definitely lose the third place series. The biggest problem for VKS against Fly is that they were being way too passive and inactive. There were some interviews with the players where they mentioned needing to improve on that front, but I waved it off as just average post-match talk, because becoming more proactive isn't something that just happens overnight. It takes a lot of practice to figure out the right timings and build the team chemistry to pull off early dives and skirmishes that you didn't know how to do before. And then VKS rocked up to the 100 Thieves match as if they were a completely different team. They were making plays, getting leads, winning team fights, all of the stuff. They completely gapped 100 Thieves on the day and were definitely the better team. Then, in the rematch against Fly, they obviously weren't going to win or anything like that, but they did show more life and even walloped Fly in Game 3. During these stretches of games, I noted down a few unique plays the team likes to prioritize that other teams around the world don't do as frequently. First, they love overstaying on the map for trap plays. When you would normally expect a team to reset on a very expected reset timer, sometimes the members of VKS will stick around and try to find a punish on an unsuspecting enemy. What makes this playstyle so interesting is that it's the exact same style 2019 G2 would employ back when they were one of the best teams in the world. VKS is no 2019 G2, but I felt like I was watching a similar team when I saw those plays happen. VKS also love to commit multiple members to one side of the map to try and start a fight with numbers. They do this multiple times a game, and are more than willing to give over objectives or turrets if it means they can get an equivalent advantage on the cross map. I think the next step for a team like this is to start trying out overload plays. Something VKS did not do was find timers to send both solo laners to the same side of the map. This is something that the most aggressive Eastern teams like to do, because it's one of the most unexpected rotations you can make and will catch a lot of players off guard. VKS played champions like Galio and Ryze who are especially well suited to make a play like this, but they instead always opted to have Miru and Boal on opposite sides of the map, which is the safer option, but might have left some potential kills and turrets on the table. I think if VKS want to improve further, this is a concept that would be worth visiting in the near future. Overall, I want to paint the picture that VKS is a team to look towards for the coming years. I like the trajectory of their younger players, and I think the team has shown improvement at a much quicker rate than I ever expected. It's also a big step forward that we finally have Brazilian teams who are consistent enough and mentally strong enough to actually get a series across the finish line against other regions. We've seen promising teams from the CBLOL in the past walk into a play-in, dominate Game 1, be ahead in Game 2 but then throw, and then get stomped in Game 3 for yet another what-if story. VKS and Red are the first teams from this region in the past half-decade who have broken through the what-if curse and actually won. And to top it all off, I think the region as a whole is right on the cusp of a massive change. VKS look great and have promising domestic talent. Red have 3 promising young players. Furia look like they can take leaps forward in the future. Loud looked like they had potential towards the back half of the year once Griffin found his stride. Even W7M, the worst performing team in the entirety of Tier 1, have some promising rookies who I think deserve another shot since that organization as a whole was just a complete dumpster fire since day 1. I would not be surprised if the new age for Brazil is coming in 2026 or 2027, and I think the region's untapped potential has finally taken the most important step forward. Again, I don't think VKS will do well at Worlds. I'm expecting either an 0-3 or 1-3 exit, and would be shocked to see 2 wins. However, I'm starting to have bigger expectations for the CBLOL, and I'll be looking forward to how well these teams play come next season. That's all I have for you for this one. 16 down, 1 to go. I recently started a Patreon for people who want to support me more while I'm making these videos. I have 3 tiers, each with varying amounts of benefits including different types of behind the scenes content, and even a custom Poro drawing that I'll display in video outros. If that interests you, check out the Patreon link in the description. I'll see you all for the next one. Bye!